Welcome to the Client Generation Podcast, a show where we interview some of the most successful people in real estate to help you understand how to generate leads, build a brand, and convert more clients in your business. What's up, everybody? Grant Wise here. Welcome to the Client Generation Podcast. Excited today to be joined by Mr. Phil Treadwell, who is the host of the Mortgage Marketing Expert Podcast. He's the National Director of Thrive Mortgage. And hopefully I didn't mess any of that up. He is also just an incredibly valuable resource when it comes to marketing. And I'm excited to sit here and have a conversation with you today. So Phil, thanks for joining the show.
Well, man, I appreciate you having me. It's been a long time coming, so I'm glad we got to connect and excited to chat here.
100%. So let's get to it, man. Tell us your story. Who are you and how did you get to where you are today?
Oh man, that's going to be a long question. I'll try to keep it fairly short. So as you said, I'm Phil Treadwell, National Director of Sales Innovation and Strategy for Thrive Mortgage, host the Mortgage Marketing Expert Podcast. Do some other things out there when it comes to social media and content creation. But, in short, I'm driven to help real estate and mortgage professionals build more modern and relevant businesses. And, I tell people I'm the product of a builder and a teacher. So I've kind of got this mix of entrepreneurship meets academia. And, that's kind of flowed through a lot of the things that I've done. I really thought I was going to take over my dad's construction company. I wanted to do that. And I'd gone to school for finance. I went born and raised in Missouri, went to school, University of Arkansas, and ended up finishing it at John Brown. And I at that season of life, my dad was like, nothing would make me happier if you did that, but you really need to go see if there's something, else that you can do, because you don't remember how difficult it was in the, late 70s, early 80s when it come to, construction and lending because rates were so high. And so I ended up answering a newspaper ad. They were looking, it was kind of a blind ad. It said, looking for someone with sales and management experience, of which I had both. I was a store manager for Blockbuster Video in Fayetteville. I would have still had that job to this day if obviously they went out of business, but it was like every Friday and Saturday night and every weekend. And man, I wasn't looking to do that. And so it was a mortgage company when I answered the ad, and worked for a really good little correspondent shop, a little mortgage banker, did a lot of manual underwrite government stuff during the subprime boom, if you will. And I had a really great mentor that told me how to put a good file together, how to, create really good referral partner relationships, and the true fundamentals of the business. And at that time, people weren't really getting taught a lot of that. So had a good foundation, ended up opening a little broker shop, ended up selling that to Wells Fargo right before the financial crash, had some good timing there, and didn't love the big bank world. So I went back into kind of mid-size mortgage banker, and the other content and stuff came in years ago as I was running an area or region. This is probably 2016, 2017. I realized that as I was recruiting or trying to meet people in markets outside of, Southwest Missouri, Northwest Arkansas, Northeast Oklahoma, anything outside of that, people didn't know who I was. People didn't know who my company was, and my effectiveness went way down. And so I started seeing some people do some content marketing and, blogs and just some stuff online. I'm like, okay, well, when we meet someone or we get someone's name, we Google them, right? We Googled people at the time. So I was trying to give them something to Google. And then all of a sudden I see this crazy guy that was like yelling on social media about all kinds of stuff named Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V as we all know him. And he said, he was talking about how a lot of corporations that kind of have the old school white hairs, if you will, didn't progress with companies because they either didn't want to invest the money into something that they may not get a return on because they were at the twilight of their career, or they just didn't want to take the time to learn something new, having done it one way for so long. And that really resonated with me because that was a lot of how the mortgage industry was at the time. So I started consuming his content and realized instead of just doing, a lot of website and blog and SEO stuff, that I really needed to focus on social media. And I mean, that's what we do today. If you get someone's name, the first thing we do is look them up on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. And so as I was trying to add value to this target audience, which was other mortgage professionals, I started an Instagram page. I called it Mortgage Marketing Expert only because I owned the domain name, because in Web World, I would buy all kinds of domains for stuff. And I was going to do a mortgage marketing tip of the day. And after like 30 days, there was like 1,000 people following the page. But after 90 days, I started running out of stuff to say, because there's only so many one-liners you can come up with before you just kind of start saying the same thing over and over. So I ended up starting a podcast. I've been wanting to do it for a while. And I thought, if I bring experts on and have a conversation, they'll have quotes that I can use for this tip. And I really had a very short-sighted view of a podcast, because I really wanted to use the content to repurpose it for this one page. What happened is we had some huge guests on. I didn't expect really people to listen, but we had some huge personalities, and they just dropped some great knowledge. And the podcast blew up. And so we still repurpose content and put it out across social media. And that's, giving me the opportunity to connect with cool people like you that are super talented in this space and pick up some cool stuff along the way. So it's opened up a lot of opportunities, from, speaking engagements to, different jobs and positions. And I just think that when you talk about where we're at today with content creation, with what the consumer is looking for in a customer experience, what employees are looking for in employee experience, and relevant ways to get people's attention, man, social media where it's at. Millennials are fully in the driver's seat in the real estate, especially on the residential side of the industry. The National Association of Realtors puts out their generation report every year. It's around this time. It may have already come out, but the last year it showed that 98% of people were online looking at homes at some point in the process. But about 2/3, if not close to 3/4 of people started online before they ever talked to a real estate or mortgage professional. And when you look at millennials specifically, like 85% of that was done mobile. Our attention's on our device. I say all the time, if people are sitting there watching TV, because we all do it, Netflix, Hulu, on demand, whatever, and we happen to be watching a live sporting event, or our dog ate our remote and we can't fast forward, what do? We pick up our phone and we start scrolling through social media or looking at it. And so I think that that's a super relevant way for people to be building business right now. Not that it's the only way, but it's something I'm super passionate about. And in short, that's what I do, is find out what's the next thing, where are we going as an industry, and how do we help people leverage it.
Oh, I love it, man. How do you think that content creation allows us to create a great customer experience? Because it's something I heard you say, and I'm obsessed with the customer experience, the customer journey, those types of things. But I'd love to hear it from your perspective. How do those two things correlate? How does one feed the other, or how does one live the other?
Yeah, it's a great question. We all know the formula of know, like, and trust. They have to know you before they like you before they trust you. And I say a lot that effective marketing is the balance of trust and attention. And that trust is really just relevance. Like, why do people care? And so often in mortgage and real estate, we spend so much time talking about what we do that nobody really knows who we are. And that's probably the biggest key that I give folks in social media is share your life, document what you do. And Gary Vee talks about document, don't create. That's important to the customer experience, because if people are consuming your content and then they engage with you in some type of a business relationship, there's already some type of a foundation of that relationship there of we have some common ground of we root for the same college team, or we know people from the same hometown, or like you and I, like we have a ton of the same friends in the industry. We even, lived in the same market for a long period of time, but we hadn't made that direct connection, but we already had some foundation. And that way, whenever people engage in a real estate transaction or a mortgage transaction, because they already have that foundation of a relationship there, you're able to customize that customer journey to them. What's important to them? Are they someone that really is going to get caught up in the numbers? Are they really big on communication? Are they going to have a ton of questions? How do they even communicate? Do they prefer text message or Facebook Messenger, or do they want you to pick up the phone and have a phone call? Typically, whenever we put out content, we're going to attract people to us like we are. And then you can kind of look and say, okay, if I were sitting in their seat based upon what I know, what type of communication would I want? What type of a customer journey would I want? And that makes it so much easier to understand what type of content do I put out? Does it need to be this polished video? Is that really what resonates to me? Or is it someone going live and saying, hey, here's what happened, a cool little anecdote to share with you, or here's how to, overcome X, Y, and Z. And so I think that that's the core of it is we're going to relate to people in a different way. My dog decided he's going to come and join the podcast interview here.
That's all right.
So, how are we going to relate to people? How are we going to drive that relationship? And that goes to the heart of providing a great customer experience.
I couldn't agree more. I think that we live in such a unique time that we don't have to like spray and pray anymore. It's not like everybody's shooting darts up and just sort of throwing spaghetti up against the wall and see what sticks. Like if we're strategic about it, we can create an experience for our users to have when that connection takes place, whenever that may be. So a lot of times what we're teaching people to generate leads first, build a brand or a relationship with those leads second, and then convert third. And I was on a training a little bit earlier today, and I asked, I thought it was really funny. I said, how many people on here read reviews before you purchase products? And every hand went up. And I said, okay, now how many of you have created a place where the buyers and sellers that are maybe thinking about working with you can go see the reviews of you and your work and the video testimonials and all those types of things, and not even one hand went up? And it's like, okay, so we're programmed to have this certain behavior, but we're not creating the same experience for the people that we want to do business with. And I thought that was so fascinating. I think that there's a lot of, or a lack of intentionality when it comes to content creation and social media. And I think that we're sitting in between, it's a lot of people are like on a bridge between two worlds. Like there's the traditional way that we used to do it, and a lot of people are kind of married to that. And then there's this new way to do it. And then there's a bunch of people in the middle that don't really know which way they want to go. And I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. Is like, if we could just be really intentional about creating an experience through our content, it would be amazing at how much more we would probably end up converting, because people feel like they know us. They feel like they can like us, trust us, and all that kind of stuff. And
I couldn't agree more. And something I'll say there is, whenever you talk about reviews, we're talking about reputation, right? And reputation management. And so often people confuse reputation or in personal brand, right? A personal brand should be about the person, not the brand. And that's what we're talking about, is reputation. So that group of people that's been doing it kind of the old school way, they don't want to talk about a personal brand because they think they have to be showy, or they even have to have a show or really put themselves out there. But when you frame it in reputation, this is something that I learned directly from Gary Vee in our podcast episode we did with him. People spine stiffen. Oh, my reputation. Well, that's something that I can get behind. And to your point, whenever you go on Amazon or if you look for a place to eat, what is the first thing we do? We look at the reviews. And do we look at all the positive reviews? No, we look for the bad reviews and say, okay, is that relevant to me? Am I going to have that same type of experience? But we've not created a great way for people to look at that. And again, people look at that because I'll look at 1-star reviews or 2-star reviews. And a great example, my wife and I are looking for a coffee maker. With this crazy winter weather and these rolling blackouts we had here in Texas, it fried my Keurig. And I was really upset about it because it's one of the hardest working things in this house. And as we've been looking through, coffee makers or espresso makers or whatnot, I'm looking at the reviews and I'm saying like, yeah, well, that idiot didn't do it right. So that's not, you kind of look through, and that's how we make our decisions. But to your point, have we really curated reputation and not showing, oh my gosh, I did all of this business, and not the vanity metric stuff, but are we creating content for people to relate to us in a sense of, I work hard for people. I have a heart for people. Are you somebody that needs to look at a ton of houses? You know what? I'm going to take the time and I'm going to show you all the houses that I need to. Are you somebody that needs to ask a lot of questions? I'm going to answer those questions. We haven't done a great job as an industry of really providing that information in our industry the same way people consume it in almost every other vertical.
I'm going to ask you a question. What is the byproduct of this? What is the result of being intentional about creating content? Not even, creating a bunch of the high quality, branded, professionally edited stuff, but what is the benefit of doing that from a sales perspective, knowing that we're in a relationship-based industry, whether it's mortgage or real estate, what is the benefit or the byproduct rather of doing those things, of being intentional about creating content, of attracting business versus chasing it, of creating a place where people can build a relationship with you without even talking to you? Like, what is the benefit to all that, to the agent or to the LO?
Well, I mean, the most straightforward one is you're going to reach people on a mass scale that you never would have had an opportunity to reach otherwise. That is the power of social media, beginning, middle, and end. There's only so many happy hour events and chamber events and networking events that we can go to. There's only so many calls we can make or doors we can knock. With social media, you now can put your message and your personality out there at a mass scale. That's why talking about who you are and not just what you do is so important. Something may resonate with someone. What do? They go look at your profile. And again, you have to look at it through your lens. As you're scrolling through your feed or looking at stories and something resonates with you, the first thing you do is go look at their profile, especially if it's somebody you don't know very well. And so that's the ability to reach folks and potentially engage with a relationship with them. It's on a mass scale. It's an exponential scale. The other thing that I think is super important about creating content from a sales perspective is, what is it, John Maxwell, that says you don't truly know something and you try to teach it to someone else. Well, if you talk about what you do, if you're talking about how you do it, you're really going to have a good understanding of it. And people are going to be able to see you as someone who's an experience and an authority on it. And, you know, I spend a lot of time on Clubhouse lately, and it's probably one of the greatest platforms to learn, to share, to network. It's been absolutely awesome. But a lady shared a story in there who is a real estate professional in Florida. When she first got into the business, her own mom did not, when they had a relative pass away and her mom was the executor of the will, her own mom didn't let her sell the house for the estate. And she'd been doing it a couple of years. And she said the main reason was my mom didn't know that I was experienced and had all the knowledge and the team and support that I did, because I didn't tell her. I hadn't done a good job of communicating that. And so again, there is a fine line between being spammy and self-promotion and all that kind of stuff, but there's ways that you can communicate your value proposition, who you are, what you do, all together in a way that people are getting that information. So I think that's the biggest benefit, is just reaching an audience that you may not have had an opportunity to reach or to share with had it not been for, connecting on social.
I agree 100%. I think what you said, there's a fine line between kind of those vanity metrics that people continue to post and then understanding how to curate a good story and do those types of things. So I would say that there's maybe even just like a fine line in understanding how to do those things. Because a lot of what I think the agent community sees is very braggadocious. Just, hey, I did this.
Absolutely.
Hey, I did that. Hey, I did this. Right now we're in the midst of an inventory crisis, and we're industry-wide, we're seeing a whole industry communicate the wrong message to sellers. I think I even put a joke out yesterday, how agents are just nonstop talking about how there's very little inventory. Homes are selling almost 100K over asking. And basically, if you want to buy a home, forget it unless you are willing to overpay. And I'm like, guys, this is a wrong message to say.
Absolutely.
to communicate to somebody that's thinking about selling their property. Like, why in the world would I want to sell my house if I don't think I'm going to be able to go buy anything? What's the benefit in all that financial asset gain if
you can't do anything with it?
I got to go give it all up to try to buy a house and overpay. Like, I think that there's definitely something to be said for understanding how to communicate a message to a market. And I am a firm believer that if you're going to be a good content creator, you should start to understand, and this would be my question to you, how to tell a good story. Like, how much of your content creation are you being intentional about telling a story or sharing an experience versus maybe just telling people what's happening? I think it was Tony Robbins said, if the media's only job was to inform you, they can never get your attention. They have to figure out how to get you emotionally captivated by the stories they're telling. What would be some of your comments on that?
So one of my really good friends and mentors, a guy named Rene Rodriguez, and I highly recommend that people look up his content, because he is probably one of the best communicators that I've ever met. And we have to realize that social media, our conversations with people, All of these things are communication, right? It's also influence, which can go down a leadership conversation, because leadership is influence, and we're all influencing people positively or negatively, whether we like it or not. From a communication standpoint, one of the phrases that he uses a lot is, you need to let your heart speak in sequence. And you need to, whenever you're sharing with people, you need to share the story. And he talks about a frame, a message, and a tie down. And I won't get into all the details of that. You need to go consume Rene Rodriguez's content. But the reason we have to let our heart speak in sequence is we need to tell a story. And I'll give you an example. One of my loan officers, during an event we had with Rene, he said, "Why do you do what you do?" And she's like, "Well, I like to help people." He's like, "Okay, well, why do you like to help people?" And she said, "Well, I like to, help people, create financial security or wealth with real estate." And he said, "But why?" And she went through and told her story about being one of several children from a single mom who moved around a lot. And it wasn't until her mom had, working a ton of jobs, but it wasn't until her mom had bought a house that she really realized that we were kind of safe and we had that security. And as soon as she turned 18, she started working and had really done well for herself. And what happens is then you turn that into a story, because how much more effective is it when you're talking to a customer or referral partner to say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to help you create financial security and even create wealth through real estate and home ownership, because I'm the product of however many children from a single mom who had this experience." And what happens is that story now relates with people. And when it comes to just sharing facts, there's nothing wrong with that, but I highly recommend that people share a story as to why that particular fact matters, because that creates the ability to connect with them, especially if you're speaking in a public forum. You don't have to memorize your memories. So what happens is you share a story that taught you something that you now share. And that's really how easy it is to create content. Go read an article or listen to a podcast or share a video and say, "Hey guys, I just wanted to jump on here real quick and record a video to tell you I watched this or read that. And man, it was so good. Here's what they said. And then here's what it meant to me, or it reminded me of this story." That's curating content to where you didn't have to come up with anything. You already had a memory. You read an article that someone else had. Now all you have to do is put your spin on it, credit them for their piece of content, but you didn't have to come up with anything, right? That's the biggest challenge people say they have, is either I don't have time or I don't know what type of content to create. Cool. Just go share other people's and put your take on it. And stories matter in that respect, that we can all relate to it. It goes back to that relevance. Why does it matter to them? If you don't share a story, you're robbing people of an opportunity to feel something. And, that's where people get started. We start with our emotions. We start, using our mind and eyes to look at it. And then, we make decisions in a more finite way, but to attract them on the front end, that's really what people want.
I think it's very important to remember, if you're listening to this, that people buy feelings, they don't buy facts. And it's our emotions that will drive our decision-making power. And it is only the facts and logic that will validate the decisions that we made. We sell products all the time, and I'm teaching my salespeople all the time, like, nobody cares what we do. Nobody cares that the software does this, or that it makes it easier, or this, that, and the other thing. People buy feelings. And if you can't get people emotionally connected to how products and services will change their life or transform their life or change their business or do these types of things, none of that stuff's ever going to matter. And we could jump off of a deep end there and really kind of dig into that topic. But I think you're so right in what you're saying, is that really at the end of the day, we're all curating a life experience. And the opportunity we have today is very simply to open up the phone and share that with people. And that journey and that transformation and that documentation of that is going to allow you to create connections at scale like you've never even thought possible, which is something that just cannot be replicated traditionally, like in a traditional business model. Meaning like calling people, texting people, sales, direct door knocking, those types of things. Direct sales, I guess, is what you could say. That's why I'm such a huge fan of creating content and doing it in such a way that's going to emotionally pull people in to want to actually have a relationship with you.
We'll think of the old school infomercials, right? The ones we all watch, those infomercial commercials. A lot of them started with, have you ever done this? Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever felt like that? They're drawing us in on an emotion. Yeah, I felt that. Yeah, I've been mad about that. Yes, that's been difficult for me. Well, then we've got this for you, right? They created a need, and then they showed people how to solve that need or that problem. But to your point, it all started with that emotion. It wasn't, we've got this really cool product that you're going to like, and here it is. Nobody cares. But they do say, have you been here? Have you not? Now, the risk is if they haven't, then they're not going to listen to anything after that. So you've got to be strategic in who is your audience, what message or value are you going to give that audience, and then what's the best medium to deliver that message to that audience. And that's really the simple formula for marketing altogether.
I know that. I could go buy 1,000 marketing books, and every one of them, chapter 1, know who your customer is.
Right.
But we see it in this industry. I'm sure you probably do. What are you coaching up to people who are like, yeah, but Phil, I don't want to limit myself. I want to work with everybody. What do you say?
Man, this is something I'm super passionate about. This is a softball question. I want to tell people to realize that niching down or choosing a segment of the industry to focus on doesn't limit you. It actually makes you more referable. And here's what I mean by that. If you were, an example is another industry like doctors. Let's say you needed some type of medical specialist. Let's say you need an orthopedic surgeon, for example. And everyone knows doctors, but a lot of times we'll say, hey, I know this oncologist over here. They may know a really good orthopedic surgeon. Well, that oncologist may say, well, I didn't even tell you, my other specialty is orthopedic surgery. The reason that I mention that is it's the same way in mortgage and real estate. Let's say you focus on first-time home buyers, or you focus on veteran business, or a certain type of property. People will actually reach out to you for the specific niche that they're looking for, and you can let them know, hey, I can do that too. And the other part of this is it makes you more memorable, especially with real estate. Everybody knows someone who's a realtor. So what are you doing to stand out to them? What are you doing to separate yourself in an extremely noisy space? Mortgage is the same way. Everybody knows somebody that works at a bank, or someone knows a mortgage lender. So how do you find something that stands out from the crowd and remembers? Because worst case scenario, they will reach out to you to find that quote unquote specialty that they may be looking for. And so you make yourself more referable, not less. And the only way to really know that is to talk to someone who appears to specialize in one thing and ask them, what percentage of your business are you doing in that specialty? Now, it may be a little bit larger than others, but it's typically 20, 25%, a max. And the other 75, 80% of their business is all the other type of business that we're all trying to go after, but they were able to market themselves and brand themselves in a relevant way that they captured the attention of a people group, and then that spread from there. And if you look at any business out there, most of them went in really deep, not wide. They went really deep in one niche or one segment of their industry. And once they owned that, they then duplicated themselves out into others.
I could not agree more, man. I think it's such a good example. And I use the doctor example all the time. If you look at the difference between a general practitioner and a specialist, the general practitioner works harder, works longer hours, knows more about the body. But ultimately, the heart surgeon is working less, working with fewer people, making substantially more money because they have a specialty, because they're known for something. And I think that it's so important for people to understand that. I always say the person that works with everyone works with no one.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go out there into the market and you just try to look like everybody else, preaching that everyone message, you start to blend in. This is how commodities are created. And this is how discount brokerages were created. And this is how all those types of things. Because if the only decision left to make is based on price, I'm going to go with the cheapest. Most people will.
Yeah.
And so if we can become specialists, you don't have to worry about negotiating your commissions. You don't have to worry about doing this or that or the other thing. Like you said, you become ultra referable. And I think based on my experience, it makes creating content that much easier. Because if you're
Absolutely.
going out there and you're trying to create content, but you're like, okay, subconsciously you're like, how can I say this so it makes sense to everybody? Because if I talk to the VA buyer the same way I'm talking to the person that's trying to buy a $1.5 million piece of property on the golf course, those are two different people.
Yeah,
They care about two different things, and
they do.
they need two different products. And it gets really difficult to create content when you don't actually know who you're talking to, which is where I think a lot of confusion is coming from.
Well, I think you need to have pillars, right? We talk about pillar content, right? What are 3 or 4 things in your content that you can at any time talk about or create a piece of content or share something about with authority, right? Me in particular, it's podcasting, a lot of times through the lens of mortgage and real estate. It's my family. I play guitars and I opened a brewery and I brew and drink craft beer, right? At any time I can give you something of value, if it's entertaining or informative or whatever, in those pillars. When it comes to real estate and mortgage, the industries are so broad, to your point, no one's really paying attention when a general practitioner gets up on stage to share. They do listen to the specialists, right? And again, those are the same ones that you ask questions to. And even, even as little as my podcast or the industry that I'm in, people will reach out and ask all kinds of questions about how did your podcast start? How were you able to leverage that? And frankly, I know a lot more about parts of the mortgage industry, or even on a technical basis, probably social media and things there, than I do about podcasting as a business or a brand. But because that's the medium and the content that I chose to go really deep with, that's where I get lots of questions around. And that's what I want to challenge people that are listening to do, is make that one of your content pillars. It's not that you don't pepper in other stuff, but really, really focus on that. It makes you memorable, it makes you referable, and it sets you apart.
Oh, and how great it is to constantly be attracting people that are interested in stuff that you also like.
Absolutely.
in
Absolutely.
in a relationship-based industry, like, that is such a good thing, is that, because if you've had those clients that maybe you weren't really like fit to work with or mesh well, what ends up happening is, yeah, you made a little money, but ultimately there's a lot of what we go back to reputational harm that comes from that, because you guys didn't mesh well. You didn't create the best client experience. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I like referring that business out. I mean, look, I totally get the specialty thing. Like, I teach real estate agents Facebook ads. Like, that is as special and even more so strategic Facebook ads via remarketing in a lot of ways. And that is so super specific. That does not mean I don't get my door beat down daily by people asking me to come into these other industries and work with them. And so I think that the point really is the more that you can focus on becoming a specialist as opposed to a general practitioner, the easier everything gets. And based on our topic, content creation gets so much easier, and you start to attract people you actually want to work with.
Well, let me give you a couple other examples that have happened to me, both on a professional sense and then in a personal sense. I've put out, I don't know exactly, 105 episodes. I think we've recorded about 110. And there was a guy who reached out on Instagram. It's been several months ago. It was actually pre-COVID because the events were still open. He sent a message on DM because in a podcast episode, one of my guests and I were talking about, I don't know if it was beer or what, but I also mentioned that I'm a Scotch guy. I have a couple kinds of Scotch that I really like. And this guy sent me a DM and said, "Hey, I heard on your podcast you're a Scotch drinker. I'm really big on bourbon. What's your favorite?" And we started chatting about absolutely nothing throughout the course of that day. And then I saw him at a conference later, a few months later, and we said, "Hey, high five, how you doing? How's things going?" And I found out that he listened to every single podcast episode I'd put out. He'd been following stuff on social media, and he never reached out to say, "Hey, that was an awesome guest," or "Man, you really changed my business with a piece of content." He reached out because we shared a commonality of whiskey. I liked Scotch and he liked bourbon. And
Yeah.
if you're not putting those things in your content, you're missing out. And the other small example is every time I travel, if I fly, for some reason or other, I don't even know why it started, I'll take a picture through the window of the wing. I'll do a wing pic, and then I'll put, the the 3-letter airport code that I'm going to and coming from. And it became this thing where other people in the industry, when they would travel, they would take a picture of the wing pic and they would tag me in it. Well, the day before, I went to Austin. It was just a quick overnight trip, and I took a picture from the hood and did the same thing of this, Dallas to Austin, and I just put, wing pics or hood pics of the new wing pics. And I got so many people reaching out, laughing about something as stupid as a picture out the front of my vehicle because I had taken pictures of an airplane wing. And I share that with people to say, the stupidest little pieces of content are the ones that create conversation, and that's where your personality comes out. And if you can get your personality out to people, chances are they'll like you. If you're in sales, you got to have some likability factor. That's then your opening on that know, like, and trust to actually create a business relationship. But if you're spamming people over and over saying, hey, do you know any people that, would be interested in buying a house or listing your house or what, it's going to fall flat because nobody cares.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. Speaking of Scotch, I had for the first time the other day, I think it was Dalmar 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Dude, by the third or fourth
with
sip.
The little antlers on it, the little deer antlers.
Yeah. By the third or fourth sip, I had that kind of like almost silky texture with that stuff.
Yeah.
I was shocked how good that was.
So I'm a huge Macallan fan. I do Macallan 12 and 18, and not to go down the Scotch rabbit hole, but they're aged in sherry oak casks, and so they have a little bit of sweetness to them, where some of the fine oak is a little more bitter. And that and Balvenie, they've got some good stuff. I like single malt more than blend, but yeah, it's an acquired taste, probably like anything else. But then you get that silky, buttery sip, the right one. You're like, I found it. This is it.
That's so good. I'm a huge Macallan fan. Macallan's definitely my favorite. Balvenie's great. We were in Denver putting on an event, and my developer was there. We had just launched Whitley. This was like years ago, and they had a bottle of Macallan M, which there were only 350 bottles produced in the United States or distributed in the United States. And I had to get a picture with it because this was 18-inch bottle. It was crystal. And I picked it up. I'll have to send you a picture. But the server behind me, we caught a picture of his face in the image. And he looked like I was literally like just stole something from him. Yeah. He was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose my job if this man drops this. Okay, back to content creation. Dude, last question I got for you, my man.
I'll take it.
Given your role, how do you see from a compliance standpoint? Because I know this is such a concern for a lot of people. My marketing department won't let me do that. My marketing department won't. How do you see content creation evolving the way, or regulation evolving the way content is created? How do you feel like those things are changing now, given the times?
I think that any company that's on a mass scale trying to limit content, or saying we don't want you on YouTube, or you can't post anything on Facebook, or you can't mention anything about business, yada, yada, yada. I think those are people that don't understand and are short-sighted, and you probably need to think long and hard about your relationship with said company. Not advocating people quit or move or whatever. What I'm saying is the lines have gotten blurred about what is regulatable, if you will. And mortgage, it's a big thing. Compliance is a big thing.
Yeah.
You have to be careful about what you share and how you share it to a consumer, from interest rates and the way you have to disclose, for good reasons, right? We're trying to make sure we don't alienate protected classes, that we're following the right process and information and truth in lending and things of that nature. But content is sharing your life the same way you would at a high school basketball game or at a bar with your friends. You're just putting it online for more people to see. And I think that very quickly, most of it's going to go away. A lot of people have said, I think we're going to have more regulation and more rules. I think it's going to go the opposite. Mortgage and real estate professionals are licensed. There's a regulating body that talks about what your fiduciary is as a licensed professional. We all know what it is. We all know what we're supposed to do and not do. And I think that, yes, we need to have the license disclosures and the things that are out there. And I don't have a problem with companies saying, listen, you need to put out there that my opinions are my own and it's not representative of the company. Like, I get that we're a litigious country and we're trying to find a reason to sue people. Like, I get it. But I also think that when you're dealing with licensed professionals that take continuing education, it's a very highly regulated business. At what point do we say, your license is going to be on the line if you don't do these things, right? Like, or if you do these things, if you don't follow these rules, if you're out there, telling people the wrong things and doing the wrong things, yeah, your license is at risk. Your livelihood's at risk. I don't think they're going to say, here's what you can and can't say on Facebook, and here's what you can and can't do on YouTube. I really think we're going to get to the point that it's evolving so fast that you can't just put this blanket statement out there. It's okay, here's the things that you can say, here's the things you can't say, here is, the disclosure requirements and whatnot, but trying to censor social media because it opens up the business to liability, I think is an excuse. I think it's short-sighted. And as licensed professionals, we need to be treated like licensed professionals. Mm-hmm. So, in short, I think that people need to pay attention to what they're doing and not giving false information, but it's out there. We're going to find out who's giving the right information, who's not. I think that, companies that are hiding behind, this, that, and the other, I think are making excuses. And when we start talking about voice technology and we start talking about, predictive analytics and all these other things, it's moving too fast for regulators to keep up, right? I just don't think that trying to censor social is the right answer. So I don't know if that was exactly what you're looking for in the question, but that's what's top of mind.
No, 100%. I think it's a great piece of feedback. I think that, you've got to, as what you said, you're a licensed professional, act like you do your due diligence, know what you can and can't say, don't mislead people and you'll be all right. But don't let compliance get in the way of content, because, you go out there and you share your experience. It's no different than, like you said, sharing it at the bar or in the coffee shop or whatever. You are sharing it already. It's, content is just allowing you to share it in a little bit of a different way. Yep. So, man, this was a great conversation. I really appreciate it. I know we went quite a bit longer than we normally do, but I really enjoyed it. And what is the best way that somebody could connect with you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, man. Best way to get a hold of me is through Instagram. It's just at Phil Treadwell. That's really a platform that I'm focusing a lot on this year. Connect with me, DM me. I promise I'll answer. It's got my other, Instagram stuff on there and links out. So just at Phil Treadwell on Instagram is the best way.
All right, we'll do it, guys. We'll make sure that we link that up in the show notes as well. If you loved this episode, please make sure, leave us a review, screenshot you're listening, share it in your Instagram stories, because I as well answer all of my Instagram DMs, and I'd love to connect and continue to collaborate with you. Thank you for listening to the episode. We'll see you on the next one. Peace. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Client Generation Podcast. Please make sure that you rate and review this episode so that we can continue to bring you more incredible guests to help you grow your business. Thanks, and have an amazing day.